All right, Northwest Sports Talk here. Malay here with Kyle Smith. We're here this week. We're going to talk about all the big moves that were made this Major League Baseball offseason, ranging from trades to signings to how they affect the team. And we want to touch on this before we go into talking about divisions, division winners, young players coming up, fantasy predictions, and we'll be doing that in future podcasts. But in my opinion, the biggest move of the offseason was the massive trade, Prince Fielder for Ian Kinsler. And Kyle, do you want to start us off this as the resident Ranger fan and how this move affects the Rangers and whatnot?
You could not have asked for a better trade for both teams. I mean, let's be honest here. You've got Jurickson Profar slotting in number 2, or into the second base lineup, which is where he showed tremendous range and athleticism. Now, one thing I will say the defensive metrics come up short is they only measure how well you... Usually they only measure how well you actually fielded a ball that was quote-unquote in play for you. So a guy like Kinsler, whose range is limited, will have a better defensive rating because of the fact that he has a limited range.
It depends on what rating system you're using.
True,
because you can use defensive zone rating, which takes that into effect, but that doesn't affect like other defensive systems.
Yeah. So, but you got a guy like Profar who's young, athletic, can move the bat, has the potential to hit for power. Keith Law's top prospect last year. You're slotting him into a position where not only is he going to give you above average replacement level defense, but he's going to give you possibly all-star offense. Now, I'm saying possible as a very highly quotable, unquote.
There's some pretty good second basemen, Kyle. I don't think he's going to be an all-star this year.
There's some good second basemen, but I also say it's one of the weaker positions in the Major League Baseball. Well, I mean, it's hard to get a great second baseman. That's not been a secret.
Right, but look at the top 3 in the AL. Just the top 3 in just the American League since we're going to talk about the all-star thing, since you brought it up. Robinson Cano is almost a lock because of moving to Seattle.
True.
Fan vote's going to get him in.
True.
That's assuming his amazing play the last 5 years doesn't continue, and I think it will for at least the first half of the contract. Touch on that later. And then Dustin Pedroia with Boston puts up monster numbers every year.
He can easily put up better numbers than Pedroia, though.
Not true.
He can hit better average. Or no, he can hit better powers.
They're probably even, because ballpark benefits both.
I think that Profar could hit 20 home runs. We discussed this the other day. Probably not, but going into the future.
We're talking about this season for All-Star. You said it. I'm trying to tear it down.
I said All-Star capabilities. I didn't say this season. I said capabilities. And so... giving a guy like that the everyday at-bats he needs is great move. Same goes for Detroit. I mean, you're trading a guy who honestly kind of hurt your team at third base, as good as he was with the bat and Cabrera.
Yeah, his
and
defense.
You get to move him to a natural position where it's not going to make much of a difference. Even though Prince Fielder's a Golden Glove, quote unquote.
He's not a Golden Glove first baseman.
He has been though.
Winning an award and being that good are two different things.
Hey man, it counts. You know.
Adams Jones raises his hand. He should not have been a Gold Glove winner last year. And Derek Jeter 2 years ago was ridiculous.
Like, what's up? I got this.
Yeah, if he can stay in the field.
Right. So basically, a great trade for both teams. Classic swap. One of the things I want to compliment Daniels on is that he convinced the Tigers GM to eat $30 million of Prince Fielder's contract, which pretty much allows him into a 7-year, $130 million deal, which ironically is the same exact deal he gave to Chu. So going forward, I think it helps both teams. Calistenos is the guy that we really haven't brought up yet, but who's going to be moving to third base to replace Cabrera, who's moving now to first to replace Fielder. So I think it helps both teams out. I mean, let's face it. I mean, Detroit has had one of the best pitching staffs over the last 3 years, and they've had one of the worst defensive metrics. So this definitely helps their defense on not only third and second. So I like the move. It's just you have a hard time complaining about it unless Kinsler falls off a cliff, or likewise with Fielder.
Yep, I agree with most of your points. I will say that in terms of the defense thing, Nick Calistenos, who could be a very productive hitter as well, that's one of he has a better hit tool and fielder tool. Like, there were rumors about him moving to left before this trade, but he is much better than Cabrera, and that should be shown. They also traded for Jose Iglesias in the middle of the last season, improving their shortstop defense greatly. Kinsler is a okay second baseman, but better than, probably the same level as Omar Fonte. And then Cabrera at first is at least as good as Fielder, if not better. So defensively, great improvements, which is should help someone like Rick Porcello, who's more of a ground ball guy who has rising strikeout rates. And then Max Scherzer, Verlander, and Sanchez. Incredible 1, 2, 3. And then for Texas, this really solidifies first base. They don't have to worry about Moreland not developing like he hasn't. They don't have to worry about Smoke, who they traded, who wasn't developing at first. They finally have their first baseman. They don't have to do anything crazy like move Kinsler to first so they can play Profar. And this also went in well with their move of signing Cho, who has an incredible on base. Could be a great leadoff guy in terms of getting on base, and hopefully now that he won't be in center because they have Martin, who's a very good center fielder, that will also help him maybe rest his legs a bit, and that should help his defensive numbers as well because he's not a center fielder. Everyone knows this, and Cincinnati knew this. That's why they moved Billy Hamilton to center field. And Kyle, your thoughts on the Cho deal, kind of solidifying that batting order and being like one of the last big pieces you can afford, especially in terms of offensively in the lineup.
I think that you're trying to take advantage of Adrian Beltre's prime. He's hit 312 plus the last 2 seasons. He's hit over 30 home runs. He's actually making a case for a Hall of Fame career. If you'd asked me 5 years ago if this guy had a chance in the Hall of Fame, granted I would have told you I didn't know shit about baseball. But second, I would have told you there's not a chance in hell if I'd been following the game. Because this guy came in at 18 as one of the best prospects that major leagues have talked about, at the time. And so it definitely, the point I'm trying to make is that you got 2 guys that are in the top 7 OBP the last 5 years. I mean, you can say what you want about, like, post-production once you sign the contract. But the fact is, these are 2 of the best guys in the league at getting on base, and one of them hits for power. One of them can't hit a lefty, but, I mean, he did improve his average from, like, 170 to 212. So, I mean, it's whatever it is, does he hit better than 212 next year? Does he hit 230, 240? Because if he hits 240 against a left-hander, this guy could hit 320.
Yeah.
310.
That's for sure.
I mean, he's a great hitter. No one's ever questioned that. I mean, the guy gets, he was hit by a pitch 35 times last year? 28 times last year?
He's a new Craig Biggio in terms of getting hit by a pitch.
Very true. So, I think it's a good deal for Texas. The real question remains, are they going to get the value of those contracts at the end of the term? Yeah. I don't think that really matters if you get a World Series in the next 3 years, which, I think it's just as much close up in the air as most teams, but they're getting close, and I think they're great additions.
And then Detroit, they've had a few more moves that we just want to touch on really quick. For some reason, they decided to trade Doug Fister for nothing. Robbie Ray is interesting, and let's see if he can be a potential prospect that can improve and develop into a back-end starter for them. And then they signed Joe Nathan for a 2-year, $20 million contract to try to finally solve their closing issues. I'm not too keen on paying closers, especially when they're older like Nathan, but at least it is only a 2-year deal, and Detroit obviously has money to throw around. So if they can, have Nathan that they can count on for when their starters dominate games and they can try to solidify that bullpen, they're really trying to make an effort to have a more complete team with, like, this fielder trade and being okay with the trading Fister to try to get some more pieces. So, Kyle, thoughts on what Detroit did with the rest of the offseason besides the Kinsler fielder deal?
I'm very confused by the Fister trade. I mean, I've got Robbie Ray's stats here in front of me, and I'm looking at it. And this is a guy who struggled immensely in 2012 in single A high. I mean, that's not a good sign. But then again, in 2013, he was in the same spot, single high A with 10.7 K per 9. Pretty decent. And then he went on to Double A and had similar success with a 9.3 K per 9 with only a 3.3 walks per 9. So, do I see the potential there? Yes, but are you really telling me that you traded a legitimate 3+ or 4+ WAR player for Robbie Ray? I mean, I know you at this point you have a lot of money tied into Cabrera. You're gonna have a lot of money tied into Cabrera. You're going to have a lot of money tied into Verlander and maybe a couple other pieces.
Scherzer's up free agent at the end of the year. Coming off of Cy Young here. He's about to get paid.
But, God, I don't see the trade. Honestly, I just don't. I mean, obviously, this guy's made a ton of great moves last couple years, Zembrowski. so I'm not going to take it away from him. But I just don't see what he sees. This guy's already 22 years old. So I'd give them a D for that trade. I think the Nationals, I hate to use this word, but they raped the Tigers on this trade.
Yeah, they definitely won that trade. And moving on, we don't want to spend too much time on each team because we have individual team and division previews hopefully coming. And let's talk about the team of the offseason in terms of money spent. They decided not to take the offseason off. They decided they didn't really care about the luxury tax because they're the New York Yankees. And I just want to throw some names and numbers, and then we'll let Kyle talk about them, and I'll talk about them. Ellsbury, 7-155. Brian McCann, 5-85. Carlos Beltran, 3-45. Hiroki Kuroda, 1-16. And Tanaka, 8-155. That's a lot of money, a lot of years to throw around. Kyle, where do you want to start with this situation?
Well, I want to start by their best signing, which was Brian McCann. Because you should have signed Jamie Martin 2 years ago. Russell Martin, excuse me. And so you needed to fill a gap there. You traded your best prospect, quote unquote, 2 years ago for Pineda, who I just read an article about today. He's down to 275. Can you believe that they got McCann for what they got? I mean, I think that's a great deal. This guy's hit 20 home runs in 7 straight seasons. He's got a great slugging percentage. I mean, for a catcher. His OBP's not great, but are you really looking at that for a catcher? Let's be real here. They know how to bat. It's whether or not they can actually get it done.
Yeah, I would say for McCann, he's a very good player, and it was a very solid value.
Good. For a big market team.
His ballpark is going to help him for his power and batting average and slugging percentage. My concerns with him is because of his age, he's over the wrong side of 30. For a catcher, that's a concern, and I'm just worried that he's going to break down early, and then the Yankees are going to be in their continual problem of having to use him at DH or first, and that comes into lineup problems with not having the catcher and things like that. And that's my concern with McCann. And Kyle, what about Ellsbury?
Well, you got yourself an OBP machine. You got bases, you got RBIs, you got doubles. I think that it was a good signing. Did they overpay for what has been said as a freak injury player? I mean, you can watch the tape. I mean, it's been clashes. It's not like something where he's running and he just hurts an ankle. It's like he literally, there's 2 guys going for the ball and he gets hurt.
Can you change that mindset, though, and will that always be a problem?
I mean, maybe that's a communication problem in Boston. Maybe that's a Jacoby problem. Maybe that's an infielder surround him problem. You really don't know. So I like the contract. He's in his prime. I think he's a good player. It just goes to show that the Yankees aren't afraid to spend much money. Do I think the contract will end up being worth it? Absolutely not. I say that about 95% of the Yankee contracts. I think this team is built more on how well their pitchers do than their offense. I mean, you may be looking at the offense as the main thing that saves them, but you can't convince me that Jacoby Ellsbury is going to have an MVP season this year. He may rake for the New York Yankees, but is this guy going to hit 310? No. Is Brian McCann going to hit 280? No. Is Carlos Beltran going to hit 280? Maybe. I mean, you're not signing guys that are going to blow you away. So yeah, is it a good deal for the Yankees? Maybe. Is it a good deal for any other team? Absolutely not. That being said...
Yeah, I would like to add on Ellsbury. Obviously, the 32 home runs in 2011, that incredible season where I think he should have won MVP. He's never had over 10 home runs in any other season. His doubles were down from that year. He played less games. So obviously with Ellsbury, you're kind of looking at a guy who's going to probably do one 15-day DL stint. His defense is incredible, and the value he brings on the bases is incredible. Last year, 52 steals, 4 caught stealing. I believe that rate led the majors, and he had the most steals in the majors. So that's something that is definitely helpful. His OBP 355, that's passable for sure for a leadoff guy. Slugging 426, obviously not good, but we know he's not a power guy. And hopefully in Yankee Stadium, some of those doubles he can increase his doubles with his legs too. And basically the main thing with Ellsbury is he can be a near MVP guy. He can make this contract be successful if he stays healthy? And that's the big question mark with him, and I don't think he can, but he went to Oregon State. He's a Washington guy, right by Oregon, Vancouver, that little area, and I thought he was going to Seattle at the start of the offseason. I was very convinced of that. I was right on McKinnon going to the Yankees. I was wrong on Ellsbury going to the Mariners. Didn't see Skid and Cano.
Would have been good for you.
But let's talk about the third veteran batter they added, Carlos Beltran. Kyle Smith. 3-45.
I think it goes back to the Yankees. I mean, you really have to evaluate the Yankees and the Dodgers and the Red Sox and some of these bigger major teams as a different entity, and that's, you can argue whether or not that's a problem with baseball or that's a problem with, whatever else you want to come up with. I like it. I think they overpaid for him, obviously, but if you're banking on him to be a premier player, then you've got it wrong. You need Jacoby to be that player. But, that being said, if Jacoby's going to be that player, you definitely need a veteran guy in there. I mean, everyone remembers Bernie Williams for the wrong reasons, but the guy was great. I mean, he was a solid rock. Granted, he was center fielder, but I'm just comparing him to like another veteran player where you have the attitude of being a Yankee and playing like a Yankee. Obviously, Beltran's never been a Yankee, but he played New York for a couple years, so it's not like it's nothing new to him. He excelled in New York. He likes the pressure. Clearly, he was one of the best hitters in baseball last year. I mean, you can almost argue that
Beltran in the postseason.
You can almost argue that you'd rather face Cabrera than Beltran last year because of Cabrera's abdominal issue. That being said, do you really want to pay a guy for what he just did and not what he's going to do? That becomes the main question. So, as long as the pitching for the Yankees evens out to about a 4.5 ERA, then you put yourself in a good position. But likewise, I don't really see the next year and following year, but you are signing potential Hall of Famers, so I don't hate it.
Yeah, I think Beltran is a Hall of Famer. Obviously, he kills it in the postseason. His play's definitely slipping. His defense is definitely slipping. He doesn't run at all anymore. He also misses games like Ellsbury, so obviously the Yankees' older health's going to be an issue. And speaking of pitching, the Yankees brought back Hiroki Kuroda 1 year, $16 million. Not much to say about Kuroda. He definitely had a bad second half, but I think he's one of those veteran guys that's going to pretty much be consistent year in, year out.
Lights out first half.
Yeah, absolutely. But, he's definitely on the end of his career. Obviously a really good pitcher in Japan. But let's talk about the younger import from Japan, Tanaka. Kyle, what are your thoughts on Tanaka? Huge contract, $155. Yankees stepped up and paid the bill.
Personally, they overpaid, obviously. You got Darvish, who's been second and fourth in Cy Young his first 2 years in the league, making $60 million. Granted, they paid a $52 million posting fee, but you put that together and you're still at like $110 million.
Right.
So it makes no sense for them to pay Tanaka this amount of money. But, that being said, I think it's a great fit because you've got Hiroki Kuroda there to ease the transition for a guy like this. They're very similar pitchers. I would argue that Tanaka has more movement on his fastball. So, I mean, obviously being younger, that helps. But I would say that you could not ask for a better pitcher to usher in Tanaka than Kuroda. Because they both are split, heavy, fastball pitchers. So, to me, I thought it was a great signing for New York. I know they overpaid. I think this is the best deal of their offseason outside of McCann. Better than Ellsbury, better than Beltran. Because everyone's on CC's ass about his horrible year last year. Give the guy a break. He's been good for like 9 straight years. Like, seriously. People need to get off this guy's back. I am flabbergasted by the amount of hate I've seen on CC Sabathia, and that's a subject for another day. But, that being said, Tanaka really rounds out this rotation. I think their best pitcher this year is going to be Ivanova. I've been saying it for 2 years. I think he's a great pitcher. He's got tremendous fastball. He can throw the curve. He's got a little bit of cutter from Mo. He's got a lot of elements in there, and he's never been an injury guy, really. I mean, he's had a couple hiccups, But I mean, besides that, the guy's been a flamethrower. And I think Tanaka was a great addition to the staff. And I think when it's all said and done, he could be the best addition of this year.
Is CC Sabathia still an ace?
Yes.
I say no. So we're going to move on really quick. We can discuss that later.
Discuss that in the breakdown.
Absolutely. One team I want to bring up just in between, feel like we're talking positively for the most part, teams making moves to better themselves. I want to talk about the team that, in my opinion, has just done all wrong this offseason, and the Philadelphia Phillies. I don't know what they're doing. I don't know why they think they still can win. If I were the GM, obviously Amaro's different because he can't be the new guy coming in, but I would have blown it up. They got it. I like the Ellie contract just because it was a small extension, but he hasn't been the same player for obvious reasons, injuries. They bring in Marlon Byrd for 2 years, $16 million. He's had one good year last year, and all of a sudden he's worth that. Carlos Ruiz is coming off a steroid suspension, a down year from the previous year, which is really good, where he was, apparently using performance-enhancing drugs for 3 years, $26 million for a 34-year-old catcher. So, Kyle, do you have any quick thoughts about how bad the Phillies have been? We're both not fans of them.
I just think that they're a team that's struggling. They should be a team that's trading off their assets. There's no reason in the world to keep Cliff Lee.
Yeah, he's incredible. He's top 5 pitcher pretty much.
Be honest. You're a Mariners fan. What would you trade to get Cliff Lee right now?
Any prospect
would you trade Paxton?
Yes, I would. Any prospect not Taijuan Walker, I would trade. I would trade Paxton and stuff. Obviously, they would want that.
You trade Paxton, Franklin, and Smoke for this guy.
Yeah, Smoke's not good, but I would definitely trade all three of those for Cliff Lee and take all the money.
He would take them.
Yeah.
I mean, let's be honest. Dominic Brown is your most valuable piece.
Who doesn't get on base.
And he's been developing for like 7 years.
Yeah, his on-base percentage is horrible.
I mean, granted, he had a great year, but you're telling me last year at this slash line, 272, 324, 494, you don't trade him mid-season?
324 on base for your supposed up-and-coming
You don't
batter.
trade that guy last season? He's having the best season of his career. You don't trade him? You know everything about this guy.
He's 26 already.
You know everything about this guy. There's nobody knocking on your door for a prospect like that. I mean, I just think Ruben Amaro's one of the worst GMs. I got to give him credit for putting that team in the position to succeed that was already there.
Pat Gillick did all that.
He still did what he needed to do to keep it in place.
You mean by overpaying Ryan Howard and overpaying Jonathan Papelbon?
I don't think that was before they won the World Series.
He signed them. He signed them, though, is what I'm saying.
Yeah.
Yeah, so
yeah. But either way, I just don't see this team. The Hamels extension was just ridiculously obnoxious. He's not that kind of pitcher.
No.
He's never even had a sub-3 ERA, has he?
I don't think so. Like, he's been close. He's never had a dominant year. He's never been the best pitcher on his own team. And that's the one thing that kind of threw me off because he got paid like an ace.
He had a 279 and 305. So I guess he had some pretty decent years. But keep in mind, this is a guy
He's 30 already.
Doesn't gas. He's a changeup heavy pitcher. I don't know. I just don't see why you spend $145 million on a guy like this.
Yeah, the one thing I will say about Hamels is he stays healthy, and that's really key.
I was gonna say.
I mean, it sounds like we hate Hamels, and that's not what I'm trying to convey. Hamels is a 2, but he got paid like an ace. That's my only issue with it. Hamels is a great 2, and he just got paid like an ace, and he's not an ace to me.
Looking at what Tanaka just got, he looks like a bargain.
Well, a lot of pitchers look like a bargain. Matt Cain looks like a bargain after his disastrous year last year.
He'll bounce back.
Yeah, he will. But that's the Phillies in a nutshell. Ruben Amaro. That's all you need to know. So he, in my opinion, will be gone at the end of this season because they are not going to be good.
They do have a sabermetrics guy. He just isn't allowed to speak.
Yeah, it's kind of similar to the Seattle Zarenzik situation. So, once again, bringing back up the AL Central, we just wanted to touch really quick on the White Sox and their attempts to find young batters to build around. They went out on the limb, and they're the team that got Jose Abreu, that monster first baseman from Cuba, the import, 5 and 60. They traded for Adam Eaton. They traded for Matt Davidson. They're really trying to rebuild that old lineup, and Adam Dunn's in his last year. They just gave Konerko a 1-year deal, kind of like a farewell tour for him. He'll pretty much be, part-time DH, part-time first baseman if Abreu falls off. They got Alejandro De Aza. They just traded for Garcia last year from Detroit. They got a lot of young, up-and-coming batters. And then when you have Rick Hahn as your pitching coach, you never know when you can just draft a guy in the 4th round and really develop him, or a first-round guy like Chris Sale, who everyone thought was going to get hurt, and he's a top 3 pitcher in baseball. So, Kyle, thoughts on the White Sox and their attempts to rebuild their team on the go?
One thing I just want to say, the Chicago White Sox have had better luck with pitchers in the last 4 years and staying healthy than any other team in baseball.
Rick Hahn, best pitching coach in baseball. Him and Dave Duncan forever just going at it for who the best pitching coach was.
They're very conservative in their approach. They always look at the long term, and that's going to benefit them greatly. But I like a lot of these moves. You turned Addison Reed, who, in my opinion, was an overachieving closer, severely overachieving closer, into, somewhat of a prospect to Matt Davidson, a guy who's been highly regarded for the last couple of years. And I'm not trying to tell you I'm high on Matt Davidson, but, you lock down the 3rd spot, and this guy hits 260 with 17 home runs and gets on base. You really can't complain too much about that trade, especially when Addison Reed has the potential to get sandboxed in Arizona. Or Colorado, excuse me. Either way.
Arizona.
Is it Arizona?
Yeah, he's on the Diamondbacks.
Wasn't Colorado?
No.
Okay.
Yeah.
Couldn't remember.
Yeah.
Either way, he's going to sandbox either way. I guess sandbox is more applicable to Arizona.
Yeah, it worked. You had the good joke, you just, ruined it at the end.
Oh, I could have swore he was in Colorado, though.
One thing I want to mention on the White Sox, Chris Sale will win the American League Cy Young this year. He's due,
3rd straight
I love
year.
him. No.
Second.
I didn't bring up Brandon Morrow. So, that's the White Sox. And speaking of sandbox and getting sandboxed, Arizona Diamondbacks. I don't know what they're doing as well. They've had some interesting moves. They have a very good team overall. Goldschmidt's a monster. I don't know why they think their pitching is good enough to contend with the Dodgers. That's my confusion. There were a lot of rumors about them trying to trade for David Price and Jeff Samardzija. Obviously, Archie Bradley, top 10 prospect, incredible-looking pitcher from all the reports I've read, from Baseball Prospectus to Keith Law. They're hesitant to include him in a deal for any of the pitchers, which makes sense, but at the same time, if you're going to go out and trade young pitching, it's Tyler Skaggs for Mark Trumbo to try to get more power, because that's all he can do. You really need to try to win it to go for it, I feel like. And if you think that you can extend David Price, you may need to trade Bradley and bite the bullet.
He has to agree to it first, though.
Yeah, well, of course, but I did not like the Justin Upton trade when it happened. I don't feel like they got enough. Randall Delgado is, 4th starter at best. Martin Prado is a guy they also extended, who's a utility guy that's a good player but also gets hurt. Kyle, thoughts on why they think they're good enough to challenge the Dodgers?
One thing we had this conversation the other day. One thing I will say about Arizona, for every good move they make a bad one. It's hard to evaluate their franchise because until you really see the results of it, you don't really know. Kevin Towers has done a decent job. I think we can both agree to that. But at the same time, don't you agree? For every good move he makes, it seems like he makes an equally confusing one.
Yeah, the Upton trade was horrible, but then you come back and you draft like an Archie Bradley or Brandon Shipley.
Right.
But then all of a sudden,
Bauer and Skaggs were guys that 2 years ago you could have got a lot for, but you held on to because you overvalued.
Yeah, the Bauer thing.
Wait at
Bauer fell off hard.
But that guy was a top prospect.
Yes, he was. Yeah.
He
was in the same draft as Garrett Cole. They were on the exact same team at UCLA together. They were both top 5 picks. Cole went first, and Bauer went third. Bronson Arroyo, $23.5 million for 2 years. Overpay. Just look at Bartolo Colon, 2-20. Scott Kazmir, 2-22. Just those two players alone are much better values than Arroyo. They both have bigger upside. Colon was a fringe Cy Young candidate in the bottom 5. I don't know why they paid Arroyo that much. He's not that
part
good.
About that contract, I want to throw out $4.5 million buyout. This guy's 39.
He should be getting $4.5 a season.
And he's going to get a $5 million buyout? Okay, moving on.
Yeah. Kyle, Who are the best two teams in baseball last year, off the top of your head?
Red Sox and Tigers.
Okay, best team in the National League.
St. Louis. I mean, how can you not say St. Louis? For a second, I just kind of blanked out there because my buddy put me on the spot here. But
that's what I do. That's what the host does.
You know, St. Louis is one of those teams. They got great pitching depth. They've got great managerial skills.
Amazing scouting and development.
They've got amazing scouting development, and the Peralta thing is the worst thing I've seen them ever do. And
it's not even that bad.
I don't even know if it's that bad when you consider they have so much money to play with.
They're the only hole in that batting lineup for the most part that they couldn't solve internally easily because of like if an outfielder falls off, like Holiday gets hurt, Oscar Veras, top 5 prospect, call him up if he's ready.
No problem.
They didn't really have a shortstop. Pete Kozma, not the answer, folks.
Yeah.
So they signed Johnny Peralta, and he's a all-star. Obviously, defensively, he struggles at short, but he's good value for what he signed, which 4 and 52, 53.
I wouldn't say it's good value.
For
I'd
this
say
market?
It's good value for the franchise. A team that has money to spend that isn't spending it. I'd say it's good value.
I wouldn't say
but
they're
if
not
you're telling
spending
me the
it.
Royals signed this guy for 4 years, $52 million, you would be lamenting and screaming at them hardcore. So it goes to show you the MLB more so than any other league is like that.
Yeah, and then the other thing.
Because I mean, you agree with that, right? Though
I think
if a normal team signed Peralta to 4 years, $53 million, you'd say garbage.
I don't think it's as bad as the Bronson Arroyo contract because I would give Peralta. I wouldn't give him 4 years, but I would easily give him 3 and 36, which is 12 a year, which is pretty much the same thing he got. I mean, he's worth 12 a year, but the years for how old he is and being at short, that's my main issue with the contract. But the other deal they made, which I think was one of the best trades of the offseason, was trading David Freese from third so they can move Carpenter to third, call up Colton Wong, one of their better prospects, put him at second, and they got Peter Burgos, a monster defensive outfielder who still has some potential with the bat, but he could be the top defensive outfielder in the National League, him and Gerardo Parra in Arizona. Kyle, thoughts on that trade?
We talked about Ruben Amaro. He holds nothing to the GM of the Angels. Do you know his name? It's escaping me. It's on the tip of my tongue, but
I don't want to say the wrong name, so we'll just say the guy that drafted Trout isn't the GM anymore, I don't believe.
Yeah.
And this is the man that signed Pujols and Hamilton and traded Burgos, although I do like the deal to get Skaggs, but
this guy has made some of the worst moves I've ever seen, though. I mean, why are you trading? You know, we're going to go on this when we do the rankings. So I'm not even going to go into that right now because it's almost like frustrating me to even think about some of the moves this guy's made. What in your right mind makes you think David Freese is going to make an impact on your team? He's 30. He didn't get called up till he's 27, 28 years old. He had one of the most incredible postseason runs of any, prospect call-up in MLB history. I'll give him that.
Kyle, what team did he pretty much single-handedly beat?
We don't talk about things like that. What we're more focused on is, how about not blowing a game when you have it, the last pitch, the last out. So we'll move on. But either way, the Angels are a train wreck. They will be for several years to come because nobody will ever take those contracts off their hands.
Yep.
They were lucky the Yanks even took the Vernon Wells thing off their hands. So, that being said, good luck, Angels. I mean that in the worst way possible.
We both hate the Angels. That's all that needs to be said. New York Mets, Kyle Smith, Chris Young, 1 year, $7.25 million on a short contract. I like that. Curtis Granderson, 4 years, $60 million. Not too fond of that, but those two really helped fill out the outfield. That was one of their biggest issues last year. And they also got Bartolo Colon on a 2 year, $20 million deal, which if he's anything like he was the last couple years in Oakland, that's a very good deal for what he is costing. Kyle Smith, quick thoughts on the Mets.
Quick, taking this opportunity to rave about the Mets pitching staff. I think the guy who took over 2 years ago has done an incredible job putting them in position as well as developing some of these prospects. Harvey, Syndergaard, Nice, Wheeler, the trade at the deadline for Beltran 2 years ago. I think the Cologne adds rotational depth at the top. I think the Mets are a very surprised team that a lot of people aren't looking out for. I couldn't necessarily rattle off some of their depth, but because their pitching is so good, maybe they make a splash. Regardless, Granderson, not a fan of the deal. I think that this guy has shown that he hit 300 in 2007 and has declined every year since then. Granted, he hit $40 in the smash box that's New York Stadium. But I just want to tell you, this is just a little quick tidbit for all you parents out there. Get your kid to bat 180 and you can get $7.5 million. Enough said. Chris Young, garbage.
I'm going to tell you right now, Chris Young's not garbage. They're going to platoon him. He's amazing defensively.
Maybe he'll be good when he goes to Tampa Bay.
He'll probably be an MVP. He
has
that kind of talent.
I know.
I'll say Chris Young, platoon, very good value as a platoon player. Defense is incredible.
Remember him in my fantasy squad 2 years ago?
Yeah.
For like the first 3 weeks, he was like...
In Arizona, he destroyed it. And then he got hurt and he came back and he fell off hardcore. I like Chris Young for the deal. 1 year deal, just like we say in basketball.
Could have had him for 3.
Yeah, I mean, and I would just want
7.5 just seems so low.
7.25. I just want to say, since we both like Sandy Alderson, I just want to make sure we get his name on there. I looked him up on Google. That's the name of the Mets general manager. I think he's doing an incredible job.
Great job.
And then also, really quick, Matt Harvey, get healthy. You were incredible last year. So fun to watch. I really want you...
The only thing I didn't like about him was the high heat.
I mean, a lot of Verlander's never been hurt.
Yeah.
He throws 99 in the 9th inning because he's a boss.
I mean the high.
Oh, pitching up in the zone with the fastball.
Okay. So risky, man.
Yeah, and
he does it a lot.
Yeah, and he also was dominant last year.
Yeah,
so
I know. I don't take anything away.
It doesn't matter until it burns you.
Yeah, true.
So we're gonna move on to probably the next team that made the biggest impact in the offseason. We kind of wanted to save them for the middle. The Seattle Mariners, my favorite team. They definitely made the splash to the offseason by swooping in and getting Robbie Cano for 10 years, $240 million. Obviously, a lot of years, a lot of dollars, but they also had a lot of other moves. They signed the corpse of Scott Baker, hopefully the surgery, who can kind of round back into the form he showed in Minnesota before he blew out his arm. They signed Fernando Rodney, shooting arrows up in the air for 2 years, $14 million as a closer. Corey Hart on a 1 year, $6 million deal. One of the best deals of the offseason, I'll just say that right now. If he stays healthy.
Compared to Chris Young?
Yeah, absolutely.
Steal!
They traded bullpen prospect Carter Capps, who doesn't know where his fastball is going, even though it's 99 miles an hour, for Logan Morrison, one of the most well-known Twitter baseball guys that pretty much every baseball writer hates because he's an asshole. Yeah, Seattle's really trying to make some moves. There's rumors about them potentially making moves on James Russell and Jeff Samardzija for the Cubs in like a 2-pack thing. They got a lot of young players that hopefully can develop for them. Tawan Walker, James Paxton, both maybe getting rotation spots at the start of the year. Great prospects. Kyle, as a Ranger fan, what worries you about these Seattle moves? Obviously, they still have issues with batting and things of that nature, but they obviously made some moves to improve their team, no doubt.
Well, as a Rangers fan, I cannot understate the importance of a Michael Young or an Ian Kinsler type on our team. These are players that show up every day and they do things the right way. And there's something to be said for a player in an organization that does that. Not only does that, but has those expectations going in. And I think that Robbie Cano is going to provide the Seattle Mariners with something they haven't had in a long time. Much to the way Russell Wilson provided the Seahawks with that type of leadership. And I'm not cross-referencing sports, but intentionally I'm just trying to provide an adequate comparison for all you Seattle fans. I think Cano is really going to change the culture. Do I think he bats over 290? Maybe. In the first year, I think he gets better the next 3 years after the first year, because the first year is always hard. You're adjusting to a new place, new city, but I think that he's going to really love Seattle.
He's supposed to be the quote-unquote savior of the Mariners and the new face of the franchise with him and Felix and things like that.
That's the best thing about it, is everyone's talking about Cano being the franchise face, and he's not. He never will be. It's Felix Hernandez. You've had a pitcher since he was 20 years old pretty much be in the Cy Young running for 5 years straight. This guy is incredible. He's always going to be the face of your franchise. all off-speed pitches in the
He has
eighth
a
inning.
split
I'll never
changeup.
forget that.
He has a split changeup.
He has more successful pitches than Darvish. He's an incredible guy. He's the face of your franchise. You paid him. You locked him up. He's never had injury problems. He's an incredibly gifted player, and I think that, if anything, it's going to give Cano that relief of not being in that position and not having the big market on him. We all know that he's Dominican and he doesn't embrace the media that well. I mean, never really has.
That's why I hired Jay-Z.
Exactly. I think the Mariners are a real feisty team. Do I think they make an impact this year? Possibly not. Possibly. Do they make the playoffs? I don't see them making the playoffs this year, but that might be an under-prediction, honestly. I mean, you've got Iwakuma, who was one of the best pitchers in baseball last year, backing up him. And I really like your rotational depth. I definitely think you need to take advantage of a sign and trade on Taijuan Walker. I'm not one of the people that's on his boat. I think that his fastball is too hittable. It reminds me exactly of Matt Garza's fastball with more velocity. I think he can develop a better repertoire. But if you could tell me right now, and I want to ask you as a Mariners fan, would you trade Taijuan Walker for David Price if he signed a 7-year, $150 million deal?
No. And I think that Walker would have to pretty much hit his peak to be as good as David Price, and I don't think his peak is as good as David Price's. But to give that much money to Cano, Hernandez, and David Price, and then try to fill out the roster, Seattle. Exactly. Seattle is a developing, market in terms of their new TV deal, but they do not have money to throw in the Yanks. And since we can't develop hitters, it might be a little, touch and go to try to pay 3 players that much. So that's my only concern. I would trade Walker, but it would take a different type of deal. I'd rather trade Walker surrounded in a package for, Giancarlo Stanton. That's kind of always been my ideal, is try to move like a Walker, Holtzen, Nick Franklin, and more, maybe like a Tyler Pike for Giancarlo, and then lock up Giancarlo for that type of money.
Yeah.
That's kind of what I'd rather do if I'm moving Walker, but that's kind of my thoughts on the Price Walker thing.
Yeah.
I mean, just having too much money tied up in 3 guys where I don't know if it's cost effective with Walker getting paid nothing for 3 years and then arbitration for 3.
So would you rather have signed Cano, or would you rather have signed Jacoby and McCann for what they signed? You could have pretty much had them at the same price as Cano.
I would have rather signed Jacoby and Garza than Jacoby and McCann, and that's because Zunino, you can't block a top prospect like that. That makes no sense.
That's a good point. But it would also make Zunino be able to play in AA, AAA, while you get the best out of McCann for those first 2 years.
You don't call up a guy and say he's the starter and then move him back down.
That's a good point.
That kills his confidence, kills his trade value, which is an under-talked about thing when we talk about prospects.
True.
So that's my concern. The reason I just took Garza is because his contract is very affordable. Let's touch on that.
Would you rather have Nolasco or?
Garza. I'd rather Garza. More upside than Nolasco, and he's younger. So Garza just signed with the Milwaukee Brewers. What are the Brewers doing? They have no prospects. They have no depth. They have no bullpen. For some reason, they want to keep signing pitchers. They signed Garza for $4 and $52 million. Not a bad contract, to be honest, based off what Tanaka got and other pitchers.
He's a competitive guy.
Yeah, I mean, Garza is going to bring it. He might get hurt. He might not be able to, pitch as well as he or you wants. But he's going to be there. The Brewers are interesting. They got Yovani Gallardo, who's coming up on free agency. They signed Kyle Loesch last year, who's good. The draft pick thing, we're going to talk about that later for a sec when we talk about the players who haven't signed. Carlos Gomez was an MVP candidate no one talked about. Best defensive player in baseball last year, pretty much. Him, maybe.
He was better than Jacoby last year.
Yeah, he was great. And I just want to know I'm leaving out Andrelton Simmons in that statement because he doesn't count because he's an alien.
He fell off, though.
Not defensively.
Defensively, yes.
No, he didn't.
Defensive second metrics were not that good.
I don't want to talk about this.
Look him up.
There's a 15-minute YouTube highlight reel of his defensive plays from yesterday alone. That's all that matters. He's that good. The Ryan Braun's coming back. It's going to be interesting to see how he reacts to the added scrutiny and the suspension. Kyle, do you have any thoughts on why they signed Garza?
I think they just needed the depth. I mean, you look at Milwaukee, every single team got their MLB money, their TV contract. So I mean, if you're gonna get that money, you gotta spend it. That's the Bain theory, and I don't know how will I evaluate their GM because their
Doug
player
Melvin
development
will be the GM.
bad.
They haven't been able to draft.
At some point, you gotta look at both sides, though.
Yeah.
Are you drafting the right players, or are you not developing players?
Well, they go hand in hand. They go hand in hand.
But you got Carlos Gomez
in a trade.
Right, but how long has he taken to develop in Milwaukee?
Right. He also had attitude issues as well, coming from Minnesota. And that's why they were able to buy low on him.
Right.
That was one of the knocks on him. He was a very talented 5-tool outfielder for the Minnesota Twins that was traded to the Milwaukee Brewers, and it took another season or two. But at the same time, they traded for Gene Segura from the Angels, another horrible move by the Angels GM.
Yes.
And he had a great year last year. He also fell off a bit in the second half, like a lot of players that start very hot. Yeah. But he's a 23-year-old shortstop that looks like they might have for 10 years. I mean, Doug Melvin's a solid GM, but when you can't, when you can't draft and you can't develop your own prospects, it's hard to continually go out and win those trades.
Yeah.
I mean, especially when you're Milwaukee and you're at the bottom end of the market, even with the $25 million added from the TV contracts, you can't keep the fielders. You can't. I mean, they locked up Ryan Braun, but you can't sign everyone
next year, right?
No, they already extended him.
Oh, they did.
Yeah, for really cheap, like $5 and $32.8.
Oh wow.
Yeah, but not everyone's going to take that money, and not everyone's going to get those extensions. And speaking of another player who was in a similar situation about 4 or 5 years ago in terms of extending with a team that didn't have a lot of money, Justin Morneau, the former AL MVP, signed with the Colorado Rockies. Kyle Smith, I don't like this move at all. I don't think it matters, but Kyle Smith is giddy over Morneau, and I'm going to let him take the floor in this one.
I love Morneau. I think this guy's got incredible plate discipline. I think that he is a great hitter. I think he's been an MVP level hitter at certain points of his career. It's obviously debatable depending on the year, but this guy could hit 30 home runs.
There's no way he's hitting 30 home runs this year.
You know what?
I will bet a steak dinner at Texas Roadhouse on this.
Okay, well, let's bet the steak dinner that Morneau gets 30 home runs, and if he does, we're in the bet. And if what was the bet we made earlier?
We made another bet where what was it?
Damn, we made so many bets already.
Yeah, well, this one is on record. I say Justin Morneau will not hit 30 home runs.
I say he'll hit 35 home runs, but I will take the 30.
I'll give you 25, but we're agreeing on 30.
Okay.
So we're shaking on this steak dinner.
We're shaking on it. There's no webcam to prove it, but we have shaken. It's verbally consented. I think he's going to do great. Why, you ask me? Because in Minnesota, he had one batter to back him up, Mauer. And that guy could only get on base. Couldn't drive in a run. He
hit 33 home runs one year and had one of the greatest offensive seasons ever for a catcher.
1 year he hit 33 home runs.
Joe Mauer is amazing and a Hall of Famer already. Joe Mauer's a Hall of Famer.
1 year he hit 33 home runs.
Joe Mauer's a Hall of Famer.
He's just a singles guy. He doesn't get doubles.
Yes,
he
does.
Get home runs.
Keep going. I don't want to get into an argument about Joe Mauer.
I love Joe Mauer.
No, you don't. That's clear.
No, I love Joe Mauer, but you cannot say that the Minnesota Twins have put the options around Morneau to let him be as physically gifted as he's going to be in Colorado. You've got Troy Tulowitzki potentially batting 1 or 2. You've got Gomez batting 4 or 3, which means Morneau's batting the opposite. And
you are forgetting Michael Kadire, who led the NL in batting average last year, is still on the Rockies. He'll probably hit behind Cargo, and then I think Morneau will hit 5th. And then, I also really love Nolan Arenado.
I wouldn't be surprised to see Kadire hit 2nd.
Okay.
He gets on base, and that gives you 2 legitimate beasts. Plus, you got Rosario, who could have a bounce-back season.
He definitely has power. There's no denying that.
Yeah, there's no denying that.
He could be the catcher's version of Pedro Alvarez, though. So.
Which is awesome, though. I mean, Alvarez is legitimately increased every year. I hated him 3 years ago. But I would never talk crap about him because I admire his game now. I just think Morneau is going to be a good fit in Colorado. I think he's got good OBP. He shows plate discipline. He's got power. The lingering question is age. But a guy like Morneau, who's played with the Minnesota Twins for so long and then just went to the Pirates, you saw him played better last year when he was with the Pirates. He just seemed more alert and more aware and more into the game, and I think that's gonna translate to Colorado.
Okay. Before we do a little pick 'em with contracts, I just want to touch on the Boston Red Sox. They didn't make too many moves, but they are the World Series champs, and I want to get them a couple minutes of time.
One of the worst rosters ever, too.
To win a World Series? Are you kidding me?
No. Yeah.
You're weird, okay?
Their team sucked.
Their team did not suck. It says how did they suck when they just won the World Series? That makes no sense.
The Oakland Athletics won 103 games in 2005 and didn't make the fucking playoffs.
This isn't 2005, Kyle Smith.
I know, but fucking Christ, they won 93 games.
Kyle, are you just mad because are you just
good.
mad because they signed your boy AJ Przinsky?
No, because we got Soto, who was better than Przinsky last year. So
the one thing I want to say about the Red Sox is they lost Salvo-Macchia and Ellsbury, so they're going to get some draft picks coming for that. They've really made a newfound commitment to try to use these draft picks, get all these young players coming up. Xander Bogaerts is their new shortstop. There are rumors they might re-sign Steven Drew. They probably will. I don't know what's taking so long. He's not going anywhere besides Boston. He's going to go back in a 1-year, $5.5 million deal or something, and then be a free agent next year and retire because no one likes him. He's not good. They re-signed Napoli, which I thought was an important move for them to do. He killed it last year. He was a great 1-2 punch with Ortiz. They still got Pedroia. The bullpen was savage. Pitching is deep, but with injury troubles, I would say. But they have a lot of pitchers on the way with Alan Webster types.
They have a lot of relief pitchers.
Yeah.
I don't know if they have a lot of starters that I would really bank on.
Really?
So
you don't like the Alan Webster types?
No.
Okay.
I wouldn't bank on them being anything more than a 4 or 5. And personally, not yet, at least what I've seen. If they show something in their respective leagues this year, I will start to give them a little bit. But Boston, I just wouldn't be surprised to see them only win 80 games this year.
Really?
I'm just not impressed with their roster.
Is that because Jackie Bradley's trying to replace Ellsbury or something, or it's just too much?
Jackie
you just don't
Bradley
think they were
wasn't
good?
that good last year. He was way underperformed going into postseason or preseason rankings as far as how good he was in spring training.
Right.
Bogaerts is the X factor for Boston. If this guy can hit over 300, I think they absolutely have a shot to win 95 games next year. But if he doesn't hit, Middlebrooks doesn't hit, you're looking at Ortiz and Napoli, who Napoli's notorious for striking out and getting home runs, and that doesn't necessarily equate to RISP, which is, scoring with runners in position, and I could easily see them tanking next year. Buchholz, never healthy. Lackey had the best season of his career. Who's to say he doesn't start eating fried chicken again? And
fried chicken's good.
Fried chicken's bomb had last night. But either way, I don't know. I was not impressed with Boston last year. I made that known throughout the playoffs. I was flabbergasted by how well their team played. Johnny Gomes was good last year.
That's not
couldn't have convinced me that he was going to be good at any point, let alone the postseason. So, I don't know. I just don't see with Boston. I think they got lucky on a bunch of 1-year deals.
Okay.
Maybe Victorino continues. I don't even know what to say about that team. I just hate him. I hate the Red Sox. I just think their team is garbage. I couldn't believe that they won the World Series last year.
Are they better than the Rangers?
If you'd asked me last year, I would have said F no.
Who has better pitching right now, starting?
I would say they do, probably. But because we have so many injury concerns.
Right.
But like I said, last year, if you told me Matt Harrison, 2 straight 3.3 ERA sub-seasons, Holland had the best year of his career, Darvish, best year of his career, Colby Lewis, if you had told me at the beginning of the season, I would have assumed he was going to play halfway through. If you told me Ogando, I would have assumed he would have played healthy enough to start 15 games for us. If you told me about Neftali Feliz, I would have assumed he would have been a lockdown reliever for us. There was a bunch of guys, Robbie Ross, Shepard, that stepped up. Dude, Robbie Ross was incredible last year.
Robbie Ross, I like to make fun of him.
He had a 1.7 ERA last year.
I will say...
I hate the look on his face normally, but I'm just saying.
I will say
it
that
just flabbergasted me that Boston won last year.
I like what Boston's trying to do, but I could
the NFL.
I could see them falling back a bit, have that World Series hangover a bit. They didn't really add much to the team, and they might be leaning too much on the prospects. But they are built very well to continue the success year in and year out.
Yeah, I think they'll be a big contender in the next 2 or 3 years. But this next season, I just don't see it.
Right. All right, let's do a quick little pick 'em before we do players who haven't signed and potential trade candidates going into spring training. Kyle Smith, I'm going to give you some players. You're going to pick the one and the contract you'd rather have, and I'll do the same, and then we'll move on. Cool?
All right.
All right, relievers. Joe Nathan, 2 years, $20 million. Grant Balfour, 2 years, $12 million. Brian Wilson, 1 year, $10 million. Or Rodney, 2 years, $14 million.
Now, I will say that money and market is a factor, but if you're looking for the best closer on this list, it is no doubt Joe Nathan. He's got 3 legitimate pitches: fastball, curveball, slider. He can throw a changeup when need be. He's got an incredible track record. Like, he's clearly the best pitcher out of this group. Whether or not he's worth $10 million a season becomes a real issue.
Well, that's the deal. Factor in contract with ability. Which one are you picking? Still taking Joe Nathan?
If I'm a big market team,
No, just doesn't matter.
I'm prefacing it. That's all. I'm taking Joe Nathan as the best player. I'm taking Balfour as the best value.
Okay. I think Brian Wilson will be the best value and pitcher this season out of this list. 1 year, $10 million. If it doesn't work out, whatever. Don't re-sign him. But he looked great. Like, he was really rounding into form in the playoffs. And people forget how incredible he was with the San Francisco Giants. So
very clutch.
Brian Wilson is my pick. Clutch. And he has a beard, and beards are awesome. And he is kind of like baseball's James Harden with the beard thing. So that's kind of cool. Yeah. So now we're going to move on to starting pitchers really quick. Group 1. Scott Feldman, 3-30. Disgusting. Bartolo Colon, 2-20. Tim Hudson, 2-23. Scott Kazmir, 2-24. Bronson Arroyo, 23.5 and 2. Kyle Smith, pick one.
I would say the best deal out of that was the Kazmir. Because, I mean, this guy's got potential. He can actually be an ace going forward. And something that cannot be understated about signing a free agent is if free agents aren't robots. Players are not robots. If you can get them into a place where they feel comfortable and they have success, they don't want to leave if the money's okay. The player will take less to stay with the team where he likes the GM, he likes the coaches, he likes everything. I mean, granted, you're going to have the Josh Hamiltons of the world who are like, I'll take $20 million more to go to the Angels. And it's like, wow, we just resurrected your career. Why are you doing this? You know, you'll have that. But Kazmir has a great chance to really fit in with the Athletics. He's kind of an outcast who's made his, second coming. And I think he fits in well with the team. And, you know, you can obviously sign him in years going forward for pretty team-friendly deals, if you think about it. So I like that pick the best.
I would pick Bartolo Colon. Obviously, he has
production,
production and price. And I also want to point out that he has maybe some of the biggest potential worries because of the performance-enhancing drug issues, the age issues, and the weight issues. But he's definitely, in my opinion, the best pitcher on this list over the last couple of years, and I think he will continue that at a very fair deal. So, next one, Matt Garza, 4-52, or Ricky Nolasco, 4-49.
I love Nolasco, you know this. I think he's got a better pitching repertoire. His fastball is not quite as easy to hit. Obviously, the $3 million less is even sweeter. I think Nolasco showed that he can pitch in big markets as well as small markets. He pitched well in Miami, which is a small market for baseball, quote unquote, and he pitched well LA when they were running down the stretch. I think Nolasco is a great pitcher, and I thought the Minnesota Twins did the right thing by trying to lock him up early. I was almost a little surprised he didn't get more. So, you know, the Garza thing is whatever. I watched him pitch every single game, probably, after he got traded to Texas last year. So obviously I'm a big Texas Rangers fan. And his fastball has no movement. It's got downward movement, which is good, but it's not the type of downward movement like a sinker.
It's not like, ground ball inducing?
Yeah, no, it's straight up. And it's just, I mean, the guy can eat up innings, but when it came down to winning games, like big games, he had one game where he pitched 7 2/3 innings and gave up less than 2 runs. One game down the stretch where he was actually clutch. Is that indicative of his career? No, because he's played for Tampa Bay and had some good postseason runs. But the fact is that he's older now and didn't pitch well enough for the Rangers. So, to me, it's a bad sign going forward, whereas Nolasco looks like the arrow was pointing out. Josh?
I would take Matt Garza. He's younger, and I believe his upside still hasn't totally been reached. If he can go back to the Tampa Bay glory days, he's worth that contract, and I would take him over Nolasco. I just feel like Nolasco's topped out, and I don't feel like he has much more room to grow, and I think he's going to moving to the AL, place he hasn't pitched in consistently yet outside interleague play. His numbers are going to tail off quite a bit, and that contract may not look as good after this season. So, moving on, I just want to touch on 2 extensions that happened this offseason. Freddie Freeman got 8 years, $135 million. Clayton Kershaw got 7 years, $215 million added to his existing deal, and now he's the highest paid player in baseball. Kyle Smith, thoughts?
I would pay him 33% more than that.
Yep.
I think he's the best pitcher I've ever seen in my lifetime. Obviously, I've seen Greg Maddux pitch. I was much younger. I think he's better than Greg Maddux is. So, yeah, he's worth every penny, and he's worth every penny that he gets in the future.
The Greg
Pending health.
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
That goes for everybody.
Yeah, the Greg Maddux thing, I don't know if I'd put him above him or Randy Johnson for that matter, just because of how dominant Randy was when he was on. But I think Kershaw, especially in today's marketplace where players are getting paid so much more, I would definitely pay Kershaw on that. The Freddie Freeman thing's interesting to me. I read an article on ESPN Insider, subscribe to that, it's a great service, that compared Freddie Freeman to Joey Votto, and I don't know if he's reached that level yet. He could, but Joey Votto's on another planet in terms of defense and OBP, and Freeman has never had even 25 homers in a season, and I don't know if that power will ever develop. But, the contract, it was good of them to try to lock up some of their young players so they don't have to deal with this arbitration stuff every year with Hayward and Freeman and Kimbrel and Medlin and Beachy and Minor and on with the Braves. They're a moderately young team for the most part, and they need to get some of these guys locked up, so I liked it from that perspective. So, Kyle, thoughts on Freeman?
I like the Freeman deal if he were any other position.
Okay.
I think first base is the easiest position to find in baseball. And if you had told me that you spent $120 million on a shortstop with the same projection as your first baseman, and you're paying your first baseman $15 million more, I would have told you you're crazy. And of course I'm referring to the Elvis Andrus deal. But this guy's 25 years old, hits .280, elite defense, and he's at the top 3 most important positions in baseball. And you're paying $50 million more for a first baseman? I don't like the deal. I think that Freddie Freeman is a good player. He's getting overpaid because of his discipline at the plate, which I think is important. But that's the type of guy you trade to capitalize on. You can get a first baseman that can hit 25 home runs.
How long did it take you to get a first baseman as good as Freddie Freeman? Prince Fielder trade?
Technically, we've never really had one. Obviously, we let go of Chris Davis, But if you're talking about the years before, we didn't really need him. Michael Young was playing first baseman for a while and hitting .320. So you can say that they're almost very similar players. I mean, Michael Young's always been an incredible hitter with no power. I mean, he's hit 20 home runs in a season, obviously, but never consistently.
Texas, too.
Yeah, never consistently. So are you looking at me and telling me you'd pay Michael Young $135 million?
I think Freeman's a better hitter than Michael Young.
It's possible. So, do I hate the player? No. I'm not by no way saying I hate Freeman. I think he's a good player. I was really impressed with him last year. I was a big fan of him last year. I'm a closet Braves fan sometimes. So I like the Braves. I like to keep tabs on them. When they signed B.J. Upton, that really lost me as a fan. But regardless, I like the deal. You overpaid him, though.
Okay. We're going to touch on 6 players who are very talked about on the rumor mill really quick and just make a quick prediction of what team they're going to go to. No money, no nothing, just quick prediction. I'm going to throw the player out. You're going to give me a quick team, Kyle Smith, and I'm going to do the same. We're going to move on.
All right.
So these are 6 free agents still available right now as of Monday, February 10th. Irvin Santana.
Toronto. I think that they need him. I think the price is right. They've been driving it down as much as they can. I think that they're a team that needs pitching badly, very badly. They put way too much money into their roster already with that big trade with Miami to not put something better on the field for their fans as far as pitching is concerned. You can't continue. They had Johnson last year who underachieved, and you've got it. They were expecting him to overachieve last year. So with Dickey, Morrow, and Santana, you kind of give yourself at least a semblance of a winning franchise.
I'm going to do my best to pick teams that are opposite of Kyle. I think Toronto's a good option, but I'm going to go with the Arizona Diamondbacks. They've been trying to look for a pitcher all offseason. They should probably make a trade for David Price, but I think Irvin Santana is going to go there and slot in as the 2 or 3 pitcher behind Miley and Corbin. So, next player, Ubaldo Jimenez.
It depends on where his market goes. I could very much see him re-signing Cleveland just because they don't really have a big payroll. I think the biggest guy they have on their payroll is Bourne, right?
Yeah, I believe Carlos Santana also already has an extension.
Cabrera's upcoming.
Yeah, Cabrera's a free agent after this year.
They'll trade him halfway through.
They could,
or re-sign him.
Well, Francisco Lindor is on his way.
He's top 10 prospect.
Yeah, but he may not be ready at midway through the season, so it depends on how good they are.
So
he's too. I would not put him a third.
Well, I mean Cabrera.
Cabrera could move third. Yeah.
He kind of reminds me of Peralta sometimes.
He's much better defensively though.
Yeah, but I mean
he could switch around.
That ugly player.
I'm sure you could eat enough donuts to get as big as Peralta. You might need a couple hundred cases.
Right. Hang out with those pigs. You got it. 509. Anyways, I could see him re-signing. That's just where I see him though. It's hard to say because there's a lot of teams that could go out and sign him. Obviously, the Rockies aren't a factor.
Yeah.
Sure, they're not trying to go re-sign him, but I could see him staying. Honestly, they have money, and why not? I mean, he had a great season where he hasn't the last 2 years, so I could see him staying.
All right, I'm going to pick a team that's been very quiet this offseason outside of one trade that we both bashed because it's a horrible trade in our opinion. The Los Angeles Angels are going to sign Ubaldo Jimenez.
Okay.
They don't really have a draft pick that concerns them enough where it's going to scare them off away at Ubaldo's price. I see them signing him for a few years, negating the loss of the draft pick. So, Kyle Smith, AJ Burnett.
Well, I'm not going to take this from you since you pretty much informed me of this pretty much set in stone decision. I'm going to say he comes back to the Pirates. He had a really great year. He liked the pitching coach. He had a great time with the roster. It looked like he was having fun out there playing baseball.
Him and Russell Martin connected very well, I feel like.
Yeah, for the first time in a couple of years. Obviously they're a team on the rise. You look at their prospect list, they've got like 15 prospects in the top 100. I mean, nobody knows if that's going to translate, but Garrett Cole's a madman. And maybe Jeff Locke bounces back too. I mean, this is a guy who was one of the best pitchers in baseball until the All-Star break. I mean, the guy had, what, a 1.92 ERA or a 2.10 or something?
He was like a 2.12
He was really good. Yeah, he ended up with like a 3.7, but he was really bad in the second half. But, I mean, I watched him pitch a couple times. He has good location, so I could see them being a team where he wants to go back and maybe try and win a title to a team that's never
been good for a very long time.
Hasn't been good since, like, what, 92?
Early 90s, Bonds and Bonilla and... I mean, they have very great history. Great fans, of course. Amazing ballpark. I'd love to go to. Roberto Clemente.
We always loved Lloyd McClendon.
Yeah,
he was good.
Yeah. My prediction for AJ Burnett is Baltimore is finally going to pony up some money. He's going to go there. I believe he keeps his offseason home in Maryland, which also makes the Nationals a potential option if he's trying to stay in state in an area. But with all the pitching they have, I feel like Baltimore, they can slide him right behind Chris Tillman and try to talk to their fans back, yo, we've just been waiting, we didn't make any moves because we wanted AJ, blah, 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 blah. So AJ Burnett to the Orioles. So, yeah, they haven't really done anything, and the Red Sox have all these prospects. Yankees done a lot. Yeah. Nelson Cruz, Kyle Smith.
Seattle Mariners. There's not a better team out there for him. I mean, you're talking about a team that has invested a lot of money in trying to get better this year. They've added some guys, Hart, Lomo, Cano. That's among other things. Can Lomo play outfield? We don't really know. Can Hart play outfield? We don't really know.
No,
these are
and
guys.
no.
These are guys that are probably gonna have to platoon first, and maybe one
DH. Hart will be a DH. I feel like.
Yeah, probably, and obviously you're not bringing Morales back, so well, it looks like it at this point. He might be on the list. I think that he's perfect for you guys. I mean, he hits home runs. He hits for power. He's not the best average hitter, but I mean, if you're telling me he hits 260 and hits 25 home runs, that's a great deal for the Mariners. So I think he goes to the Mariners, 3 years. He's gonna want more than 2. He's gonna get 3 years, $50 million.
I would fucking burn my hat if he got 3 years, $50 million.
He will.
I'll burn my hat I just bought.
Should have had more now.
All right, my prediction: Nelson Cruz, Detroit Tigers, 1 year deal. Going to try to go for it all. They'll just slide him into left field.
What, like $20 million? How is he gonna take 1 year?
He's not getting $20 million, Kyle. You're psycho.
For 1 year? How is he gonna? You have to way overpay on a 1 year deal.
No, you don't.
Chris Young got 7.5.
And he doesn't have a draft pick connected to him. He plays defense. Yeah. So it's my prediction. I'm not trying to bring up money, Kyle. We talked about this. So Detroit Tigers, Nelson Cruz, Steven Drew, Kyle.
I don't want to talk about him. Move on. I think he's garbage. Whatever.
Red Sox, Mets, he sucks, but if people are talking about him, he's a talked about player, is he not?
He is. That's more has to do with my response than anything else. I just think he's an average player who had a above average season for a player of his caliber, and he's going to get paid a little bit more than he's worth, but you can clearly see the market doesn't want to pay him. So
Red Sox or Mets, if you had to pick one?
I'm going to say the Mets because they have more money.
I would say Red Sox just on a 1 year return. So, and the last player on the list, Kendrys Morales.
I think the Mariners should re-sign him personally. I just think he was good for you guys last year. He did well in the park. He hit above 280. He hit 20 home runs. He wasn't out there making dumb plays for you guys. It would be a much, much, much better alternative to Nelson Cruz. I don't think he can play outfield, but who cares about outfield? I mean, be honest. Legitimately, how much is a defensive WAR worth when you can hit 280?
Well, it depends on how many bad defenders you have.
I mean, okay, let's be honest here. I'm not trying to compare the two players at all, but is Carlos Beltran in right field worse than Morales in right field when they could both hit 280 and 20 home runs?
Beltran is a much better outfield defender than Morales. Morales can't run.
Okay, Lomo. You platoon
Lomo's
him?
a better option in outfield than Morales. I will definitely agree with that.
I don't know. I'm just saying he could put up similar numbers to what Beltran does. And
He could put up similar offensive numbers. So, I mean, he could put up similar offensive numbers, but I just we have too many first basemen as the Mariner fan, and if we were to get either Cruz or Morales, I hope that would signal the end to the Justin Smoke era for various reasons. So, and my prediction for Morales is going to Pittsburgh. I mean, that's one of the few places that really needs a first baseman, and he's a very good hitter, and his market's been driven down so much it could be a Kyle Loesch thing where he signs late in March and goes in and produces his same numbers. So,
yeah, that's it.
Really quick, Kyle, the last thing I wanted to bring up, is there any one player or players you think that are, by mid-season trade deadline, guaranteed to be on a different team? Who could get traded? Like, if you had to pick 1 or 2 players that are going to get traded, who are they?
David Price is the first one. I don't think that Tampa Bay is going to back off that at all. They need to get something in return for him. There's no way that especially the way he pitched last year, he's not worth the WAR that he's going to garner, because I think he made pretty decent arbitration last year. They need to get off of him, and they're going to want prospects in return. They're going to rape some team somewhere along the line.
Arizona?
Probably Arizona.
Archie Bradley and plus?
I wouldn't be surprised to see the Dodgers give up like 13 of their top 100 prospects for that guy. I mean, let's be honest, that's what they do. You know,
yeah.
I know we talked about this earlier, I still think the Mariners should be hotly and could play for him. I think that you can convince Iwakuma to come back on a relatively small deal for the next 3 years, and with Price, that gives you 1, 2, 3.
We should extend
Iwakuma's
Iwakuma.
arbitration eligible for like after 3 years, so it means you have 3 years of pretty much overpaying a little bit for Price, Iwakuma, and Felix, but by then you could trade one of those guys. So I think the Mariners should be the team that goes heavily in on Price. That being said, I don't think it will be them. I think it'll be more a team like the Pirates, who have extreme outfielding depth.
Gregory Polanco, you think could be moved?
I don't know if it's Polanco. I think it may be a couple other additions. I think
I assume
Alvarez
I assume they want a starter back, so maybe they would move Italian in the deal
Probably.
for Price. Because if I would trade to Price,
I could see Atlanta trading Turan.
That's the move. I think that Atlanta and Arizona are the two teams that need him the most, that could use him the most this year, that are realistic possibilities.
Texas could use him, but
you have no ready prospects that they would want.
I mean, we could trade Perez or Holland.
But Perez isn't on his levels of prospect.
No.
Holland's extended, and you would keep him
cheap.
exactly.
He's a Tampa Bay guy, though.
If you had Kinsler, Profar, you could build a package around Profar and someone else. So
interesting.
Yep.
Odor,
yeah,
Holland.
Yeah, but you guys aren't going to move Holland. You already extended him. I just don't think you move a guy after you extend.
But Tampa Bay would love that.
Well, of course, because they don't have to worry about it for 4 years.
So it's interesting to talk about.
So the one
$5 million for Holland, you would love that.
Yeah.
As much as we hate Holland, well, I love Holland, but you.
The one player that I think is going to get traded, now that Kyle brought up Price, I'm going to avoid the Samardzija and Chase Headley types. Ryan Braun. The Brewers are not good, folks. They could surprise us. I mean, everything's possible. But if they go in the tank, Ryan Braun's already extended to not a crazy deal. I think he's getting 15.5 or 16 mil a season pretty much for the next 5-6 years. If he produces at the same levels before last year, where he was near MVP numbers, he's okay in the left, not a great defender by any means, but he's certainly passable. He obviously puts up big numbers. I could easily see them just being like, you know what? Let's rebuild. Let's re-get some new scouts. Let's get a new GM in here potentially. Melvin could be gone. You don't know. I think he's a solid GM based off his trade success. But they could move him, and I feel like a team like Seattle, with Zerenzik's familiarity with Ryan Braun, a batter is the type of player, especially one already signed, that I would move Taijuan Walker for. I would highly prefer Mike Stanton, Giancarlo. He's so good. He's hitting 50 home runs. I'm calling it again. And I would love to get him, but if the Marlins decide they don't want to move him, Ryan Braun's the type of guy that I would consider moving Taijuan Walker for in a package.
The team that I think is a wild card in this, and you may laugh, the Red Sox. They have so many prospects, and they need the outfield depth right
they
now.
have that platoon
they
in
have
right
the
field.
Money.
No.
It would help Milwaukee out substantially in the years coming forward, and I think that they're a team that you could take on. With the monster, you could take on a player like Ryan Braun. You wouldn't even need steroids, and you'd still be really good. That being said, I also think the Mets are a wild card. They're looking to get into that type of player eventually.
Would you trade one of their top pitching prospects? Because the Brewers are going to want one. Obviously, you're keeping Harvey.
I would trade Zach Wheeler.
Okay, what if he's not good enough anymore?
Gee.
What if they want Syndergaard?
No.
You can't.
I am that big on Syndergaard, you know that.
Okay, that's why I brought it up.
So I would not trade him for that because I think Syndergaard has a legitimate shot to be a 4+ WAR player before he's arbitration eligible.
Okay.
And that's really hard to say.
Yeah.
You can't trade that for a $168 million contract. So I wouldn't trade him. But shit, maybe the Nationals?
No, not enough money.
I don't think they have the
They got to lock up Strasburg and Harper.
And they're paying Worth a bunch of money.
Yeah, although he's done in 2 years. But he was great last year. Jason Worth had a great year last year.
He's a great comeback player, especially considering he still had injuries.
Yeah.
He still did.
So, Kyle, anything you want to add before we wrap up the off-season editions?
I can't wait for baseball to start. I'm excited to go to Mariners opening day. I just can't wait. I hope you guys are as excited as we are, and I hope you guys continue to ask us questions on Twitter about what we think is going to go on. And, we look forward to seeing you guys next time.
Enjoy. Hopefully I can get Kyle into the baseball draft prospects and continue to evolve his baseball fandom. I'm about to show him highlights of Carlos Rodon's slider, which is incredible, and it might be the best slider, including baseball. It's up there. So
Fernandez!
Jose Fernandez, who we didn't bring up, he's amazing. We'll be back next week. Enjoy.
Slider's like 50 inches wide.
Deuces.